Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. This is the fourth installment in the Indiana Jones saga, if you want to call it that. Yeah, from Lucasfilm Limited. It is the 2008 entry. It is 2 hours and 5 minutes long. It's slightly shorter than Crusade, like by 3-4 minutes. But it's not the last. As we know, we're building up to tomorrow's release of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the latest, and I know they've said this before, the last Indiana Jones film starring Harrison Ford. And I said this a couple days ago. If they ever do bring back Indiana Jones as a character, it is going to probably safely, the best way to do it be after Harrison Ford, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and you and I, and all of us who are alive right now who witnessed these when they came out in theaters, we're going to be all gone. Where the audience will have no, that is alive at the time, will have no strings, no attachment. Initial attachment. There's always new generations of people discovering Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, Steven Spielberg movies, but we'll have all of us will be gone. That will go, oh, how dare you desecrate this beloved franchise by casting someone other than Harrison Ford and having somebody other than Steven Spielberg directing it. Although Dial of Destiny does have James Mangold, the guy who did Logan, directing it, so that's a different situation. We're not going to talk about Dial of Destiny just yet. That's for tomorrow. This is Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Probably the most maligned of the films, but of course we're in the internet culture by the time 2008 comes along, and everybody loves to complain out loud. The people who complain are technically the loudest, and the ones who kind of get the most attention. You know how it works. But yeah, there's plenty of issues in this where people are like, maybe you shouldn't have gone that direction. Maybe they shouldn't have done that. In the past, it's always been Indiana Jones seeking out mythological, historical, religious artifacts from different cultures. Two of them, of course, were Christian and Jewish, Jewish first and Christian artifacts between the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail, and then between that was the Sankara stones, which I don't know enough about the culture to know if they're even a real thing at all. They might be something as part of Indian culture and mythology and everything else. I have no idea, but it's so, yeah. And all these stories, adventures that Indiana Jones goes on, all are based in historic mythology that we have. Even video games and novels and things like that. Like he had one of the video games, he went to Atlantis. I forget what the name of the exact thing the story was, but it was something that had to do with Atlantis. It's a big deal. In this case, the Crystal Skull involves what looks like a giant, I don't even bother putting it on the screen. Like, it has to do, it looks like a giant elongated skull. That is crystal. It looks like an alien skull. Well, that's what they've always been assumed to have been all over the years. There's one supposedly in the British Museum at the time for these characters. It might still be there. There was a practice for a time where people would, from certain cultures, South American cultures, would wrap their babies' heads, their skulls, as they're forming to elongate the skulls. That didn't seem like a great idea, but they did it, which gave us the idea that, well, maybe it was alien children and aliens that grew up and had weird skulls that they had found. But why are they crystal? I don't know. Well, this serves to put a number of different mythologies together to answer that question. And this is my second least watched of all the Indiana Jones films for obvious reasons. It's the second most recent. The only one I've seen less is Dial of Destiny, which I've only seen once in the theaters. I don't think I saw it twice in the theaters. I saw it once in the theaters. the weekend it came out. This has the luxury of me seeing it maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times at most. I think I've seen it probably twice in the theaters and with friends over the years. I never seek this one out as something, well, I think I'm just going to sit down and watch an Indiana Jones film. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull seems like a good choice. It's just not something I would say. There are friends of mine who really do love this film, like it's their favorite. I think they're also just jerking my chain. I don't know, but there's nothing that's not I mean, I'm cynical about it because, yeah, you're never gonna, for me, you're never gonna match up to the original. It's just the way I am, the way a lot of people are. We have the benefit of nostalgia built into our brains that says nothing could beat the original. You try to make something that I like, more of what I like, I will be angry. The same thing with Star Wars and Star Trek. When when Empire Strikes Back came out, I just saw some recently in one of the fan group threads on Facebook that there was a bunch of people who put out a zine out in the early 80s. They were like, oh, we can't put out a zine about our love of Star Wars anymore since they ruined Star Wars with The Empire Strikes Back. It is just horrible now. They left out the love and blah, 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 blah. So, okay, whatever. But, we get that, of course, with the most recent trilogy, the prequel trilogy. Everybody's complaining about everything because it's not living up to what they expected in their brains, in their own minds, as to where it should go. And you know what? That's the artist's decision. He cannot please everyone. Whatever he or she chooses to put on film or digital, whatever, bytes and bits, and whatever they choose to put on is their artistic choice, and we got to live with it. Either that or we just don't watch it again. It's okay. It's all right. When something doesn't live up to our expectations, which is almost all the time, there are very rare exceptions, but when it comes to something this big, this beloved, Indiana Jones, this could have been the greatest movie of 2008, and it still would have fallen below the expectations of nearly everybody. It doesn't look, it doesn't feel the same way as the original Raiders of the Lost Ark, even Crusade or Temple of Doom. It's the way it is. And you know what? It's all right. So for me to complain and go, oh, well, this isn't a great movie. Yeah, maybe it's not perfect and it's not the greatest. It never was going to be. It just never was. What do we get in this film? We get an older Indiana Jones. We get something that we get a little bit more of this than we get in Dial of Destiny, even though he is much older in Dial of Destiny. I think Harrison made a point to say, you know what? No old jokes. Stop this. We're not going to do that. Yes, we realize all of us making the film in front of and behind the camera are old. It's just the way it's going to be. Let's just move on and tell the story. And because he's going to be surrounded by everybody who's a couple decades younger than him in the story, and he's still got to look like he's doing stunts. Like, it's believable that an 80-plus-year-old man, although he is an 80-plus-year-old man, I think his character, since Indiana Jones was born in 1900, he is a 20th century baby, or technically a 19th century baby. The Dial of Destiny takes place in late 60s. This takes place in 1957. He's supposed to be about 57 years old in this. Not too much older than I am right now. Yeah, sometimes I have trouble getting up after being in bed too long, or, whatever, standing up quickly. Yeah. Here, Indiana Jones and the rest of the cast go through a number of ordeals throughout South America, primarily. They all should be dead. It's, to me, the level of just crazy action. You can say that about all the Indiana Jones films, but there are levels to this where, yes, it's cartoonish, and they should all be dead many times over. Going over a waterfall? Yeah. 3 times, though? and then falling out of the boat truck when it happens. I mean, he's not even the oldest person in the thing. John Hurt is in this, and John Hurt should have died the second the camera showed up on him. Yeah, it's the way it is. So yeah, you got to take this with a grain of salt. Yes, it's a big, crazy adventure. Every Indiana Jones film is built out of in a realistic world, in our real world, but is also infused with mythology. It's infused with the supernatural, and it's got comedy, it's got drama, it's got romance, and betrayal, and everything else that comes with that. So yeah, it does serve up a number, just everything you could kind of want in a film. That's kind of great. That you don't really get that with a lot of films these days. But again, it has the weight of the Indiana Jones mantle that says, well, you should be this way. So in this we get, I'm not going to give you too many spoilers because some of you may not have seen it, but I'm going to spoil some things. I'm going to talk about some things. So if you're at all concerned about spoilers, go watch the film first. This is one of the kind of films that even if it was bad, it's still good. It has Indiana Jones in it. Indiana Jones and the mystery of the phone book. Honestly, Harrison Ford just flipping through pages in his gravelly tone. I'd watch it, at least part of it. Yeah, it's we get Indy, and he's taken to a place that is just made for callbacks. And it pretty much by the time we get to the end of the movie, we should not be surprised as to where we end up, because at the very beginning, Indiana Jones gets pulled out of the trunk of a car after being taken in by Russians outside the doors of Area 51, one of the hangar bays that is filled with crates and boxes of all the mysterious things that the United States has collected over the years. And yeah, there's a big callback to Raiders of the Lost Ark. You ever wonder at the very last scene where that box went? Where that box with the Ark went in the storage? That was Area 51. Yeah. It doesn't come into play, but there's a big visual reference to it. There's big action, lots of swinging and cars crashing into each other. It's sort of, for me, gets a little bit ruined. A lot of the backdrops are literally flat. It looks like flat black backdrops. Like they put a big screen behind it that looked like a mountain range in the desert, and had vehicles on it and buildings, and I could see the bottom. Looks like I could see the bottom of the tarp. Watch the scene outside Area 51, outside the hangar bay, when he's talking to Cate Blanchett. Yes, Cate Blanchett is in this film, so if you had any doubts as to if you had any reservations about watching this, Cate Blanchett in anything, even with a, I don't know if you want kind of a haircut, like a pixie cut. I don't know if it's not really a pixie cut, but yeah, Cate Blanchett and black pixie cut kind of thing. Yeah, she could do anything and I'll watch it. I don't care what her hair looks like. I'm in. It's Cate Blanchett. So you just watch that scene where she's having a conversation with Indy, and the background is 100% fake. And there is a lot of, this is the era of CGI. There was no CGI technically even into Last Crusade in 1989, which is when the last film was made. It's been 20 years since 30 years. 20. It was 20 years, almost 20 years since the last Indiana Jones film at this point. A lot has changed technologically. Steven Spielberg, of course, along with George, have pioneered with ILM, have pioneered, and all the other different companies out there. Why can't I say the name of it? With Peter Jackson, Weta, with Weta and everybody else, and a lot of smaller digital companies throughout the world have moved the technology forward, and that's, Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park making dinosaurs really come to life. Like, it's one of those things where no matter when I watch that, it holds up. This one, not so much technologically. The digital effects and stuff like that. I don't know why. I know it has to be ILM. It's not like they got somebody else outside. Come on. Maybe they were rushed through. Maybe some things had more priority or the other. There seems like to be an awful lot of shots that are worked on to sort of clean up Harrison, to make his face brighter and more in focus than anything else. I don't know why. And this is also before the whole 2009 3D revolution, where after Avatar came out, everything had to be 3D, and there was all sorts of weird effect shots where everybody, when they tried to upscale normal movies like Clash of the Titans into 3D messes, this did not suffer from that because it was prior to that era. So yeah, there's a lot of soundstage stuff. It's obvious. I mean, movies are made at sound stages. You don't expect them all to go to a South American jungle and do it's not quicksand. They make that very clear. Indy makes that very clear. It's not quicksand. But there's a scene where they have to sink into the ground, and yes, they're going to do that on a set. But it looks so much like a set. It's upsetting to me because I know the people who work on this are really good at their job. They're really good. And okay, let's get back to. I'm gonna go move to other things that are upsetting to some other people. But hey, what are you gonna get with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? One good thing, Karen Allen is back as Marion Ravenwood, or Marion Williams, and we also have a young man in this film that's Indy teams up with, named Mutt. It's like a dog's name, isn't it? Like Indiana? Who could this kid be? Well, we don't know, but his mom's in trouble. Who's his mom? You already know it. You know. If you had no idea what, any of these movies whatsoever, what I just talked about just now, you could put the pieces together. People, fans of the film, fans of the characters, you kind of know who Mutt is. And is he being set up to be the next Indiana Jones? At the time, maybe. And they do play with that just a little bit. Because at the time, Shia LaBeouf, who plays Mutt, was the biggest upcoming star in Hollywood. He was in Transformers. He was even Stevens. He's funny. He's energetic. He's likable until he wasn't. Until he was just very. I don't know what went on with Shia LaBeouf that made him such a controversial figure. But in this, a lot of people are like, is he going to be the next Indiana Jones? Is this the handoff movie? Is the next Indiana Jones movie gonna be Shia LaBeouf wearing the fedora? That was the big scary thing out of this. And after this film came out, and it didn't do as good as it probably could have, it certainly did not get the critical or cultural acclaim of the other previous films. There was a real big doubt about the future, whether they're going to make any more ever again. And Harrison was just like, I think I'm going to do dramas and stuff. I'm not going to do all this stuff. But if he was going to come back to any character, he was going to come back to Indiana Jones, not Han Solo, which he did come back to a few years later in The Force Awakens. So, but with the deal to kill him off. Spoiler. But so 2008, he comes back as Indiana Jones because he loved the character. He loves George and Stephen, and so it was a no-brainer. We'll talk about the Isle of Destiny tomorrow, but the point of all this is that Indy's back, and his life has changed a lot, and of course his personal life. There's, by the way, no femme fatale in this beyond, well, Cate Blanchett, but there's not a chance of a romance. She's Connie, So in this, the Red Scare is very prevalent. It's the 50s. We got Elvis playing on the radio and roadsters, and yeah, it's the American Graffiti era for George, and you knew that it was going to have a roadster right in the first scene, and that's what we get. But it's the Red Scare. It's everybody's a commie. It's McCarthyism. It's all this stuff. And yeah, there's that theme that goes through this, where America is paranoid and thinking about there's going to be a communist infiltrator around every corner, and we kind of do get that a little bit. It's a very warranted fear in this film at one point, and but yeah, it's we don't get Nazis. But the commies, well, they're just as bad in their own way, even though they were allies with us during World War II. But that's another whole history lesson. So what we get here in all this is just lots of big action, and we get a very flamboyant villain in Cate Blanchett, who has a sword, a rapier, and there's swordplay, of course. And you know what? I just noticed something. Unless I fell asleep at the wrong point, there was a scene I remember seeing in the original film where I think Mutt swung on a vine and did a Tarzan thing. I don't remember seeing that. I might have to watch that again to find out. You might have to watch that to find out. There's no Tarzan scene in this movie. I could have blacked out. There was one point where there was a lot of exposition toward the middle where I think I pretty much faded out and just, they're torturing Indy now. What's going on? Yeah, so they're captured. They spent a lot of time captured, by the way. A lot of time working out personal issues. While there's no screaming like with Willie Scott in Temple of Doom, but in this one, yeah, there's a lot of bickering, let's just say, which is good between Karen Allen and Harrison Ford. They do a good bicker, and you kind of get the same dynamic between Mutt and Indy as we get with Indy and Henry Sr. Not exactly, but let's just say son is resentful of the father in some ways, for some pretty obvious reasons. But some of the biggest spectacles, of course, left for the big finale, where everything is revealed, but yet not everything is fully revealed. Sort of leading up to interpretation to a certain degree, but what you do see is pretty much like something we've never seen before or expected to see in an Indiana Jones film, even though we've watched the Ark of the Covenant melt people's faces off and erase Nazis from a desert mountain. We've seen a guy eat another, pull out a guy's heart and then drop him into lava, but he was still alive, and everybody worshipped him for that. And we also saw the Knight of the Holy Grail, who had been sitting there for 700 years, just sort of go, hey, I've been waiting for you. So, yeah. Oh, and so we're clear, since we don't see Henry Sr., Sean Connery, we don't see Marcus in this, because I think the actor had passed away at this point. We do see Marcus in a photo. We do see Marcus, and we see what became of him after the Last Crusade, which is pretty great. Marcus is a great character, a great friend to Indy, and we get to see where he went from that point before he passed, and it's a pretty great tribute to him. But one of the questions asked is like, well, after the Last Crusade, when they drank the water from the cup that's supposed to give you eternal life and everything else, apparently not, because Henry Jones Sr. passed. He didn't live to be in this film. And so yeah, and does Indy live forever? Well, you'll have to watch in Dial of Destiny. But anyway, in this one, we get a pretty big. At times, it seems really messy. It's a lot of Tomb Raider kind of Rube Goldberg doors and gears and running upstairs as they're all being washed away kind of things, running downstairs as they're disappearing kind of stuff. And it's all very tense and very action filled, and it's Indiana Jones, but it just doesn't seem as grounded as the classic films. But that's just my opinion. There's a lot of people who love it. Okay, before I go, I do have to mention the most infamous scene in this, when the opening fight sequence starts inside Area 51 with Indy running away from the Russians and then escaping in a rocket sled, which was a thing at the time to test pilots and how they can handle certain G-forces and things like that. He ends up far outside the base and ends up in a little town that looks like a nuclear testing... Well, it is a nuclear testing town, but it looks like a real town with mannequins filling it and houses and everything else. And they're going to drop a nuclear bomb, which is a thing they would do. They would drop atomic bombs in Nevada. Yeah, a lot. In fact, it became a tourist attraction for a time in the 50s. Look it up. Look it up. In this case, they even built little towns, and in this case, the only way, how do you outrun a nuclear bomb? Well, guess what? You get inside a lead-lined refrigerator, which later, of course, Indy survives because of it. It gets launched through the air while everything else gets kind of vaporized. It doesn't vaporize the lead-lined refrigerator. It launches it through the sky, and he lands. The exterior's all burned out, but he just rolls out of it like, oh man, I can't believe that. And they had to, decontaminate him. And of course, they had to add the line of like, that's very dangerous, Indy. You shouldn't have done that. Be careful. Like, so kids don't do that, so they don't jump inside a refrigerator and mimic Indiana Jones. Yes, it's a good message to tell kids, but dear God, I hope kids aren't that stupid. But you never know. So yeah, nuke the fridge is a term that's been used as sort of a jumping the shark kind of term over the years. A website has taken on that name, and there's a bunch of other things. But yeah, it's considered the low point in Indiana Jones history of him escaping, like impossibly escaping something, nuking, just being launched. Where are all the other refrigerators launched? Were there refrigerators just flying everywhere while everything else got vaporized? I would figure there was more than one refrigerator in that fake town. Did they they after the bombings, the test bombings, did they just go around and start scooping up all the ruined refrigerators? What? Would have been more interesting, I think, if it just was bolted in place and then he opened it up and was a little crispy. Then he had to deal with radiation poisoning for the rest of his life. Yeah, that'd be more realistic. But anyway, and very dark. So yeah, that's all I could say. I've really spent a long time, longer than any of the other other films that I've talked about. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Tomorrow, we finally reach December 1st, and we're going to be watching Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the final Harrison Ford Indiana Jones film. Because God knows, as long as Lucasfilm and Disney exist, at some point in the future, an Indiana Jones film will happen. We will all be dead, but Indiana Jones will live. Probably because of a refrigerator. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny tomorrow on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that.